Good morning. If you go ahead and take a seat, we will get started here. I want to give Dave as much time as we can, and we've already cut him out of 10 minutes. So please welcome Dave Weaver. His wife Laura is with him as well, and they are ministering at the campus of Missouri Southern State University. Let's open with a word of prayer and turn it over to Dave. Father God, there is no expression that we could come up with that hasn't already been written in your word, spoken somewhere, of our gratitude and our praise for who you are, for what you do. And Father, all we're trying to do is to work alongside you with your Spirit mightily in place, to be able to share your gospel with everyone we can, to teach them all the commands that you have given, because we want everyone to at last be able to see you face to face without fear, to hear you say welcome, to enter into your grand and glorious place that you've prepared for us. So, Father, I thank you for Dave, for Laura, for all those who work in the ministry and the campus of Missouri Southern, and pray your blessings upon them, and help us to have open ears and eyes to see and to hear what you have done, because great is your name, O Lord our God. Amen. All right, welcome Dave Weaver, if you will, please.
Good morning. I'll try to share for maybe on 20 minutes or so, 25, and then open up for questions. So if you have any questions, keep those in mind, and we'll sure be glad to go over those. It's crazy to think how fast time flies. I know that everybody in this room realizes that. It was July 1, 1989 when I started with Koinonia, and then a year later, 1990, Lori joined the group. She came from Branson, if I remember right, and would have been 18, and I would have been 26. And Lori hasn't changed a bit since then, so I have to assume that neither have I. Anyway, it's been good. I was finishing a junior high internship at College Heights Christian Church that I'd been on for about 2 years. And in 1989, around March or so, I went to interview. I was going to go back to Washington State, where I grew up. I was a photographer for a long time, and some of you may remember that. And that fell through in April, and I interviewed for a position. It was open. Matt Stafford was leaving, and I said, hey, this campus ministry is open. And I asked my wife, and she said, well, do you know anything about campus ministry? And I said, no. And she said, do you ever go to Koinonia? I'm like, no. And she said, well, you never know. You know what doors the Lord's opening, you might as well try. So I interviewed, and the other 4 people were vastly more qualified than me. And so when the interview was over, I came back, and she said, how do you think it went? I said, I don't have a chance. Well, about 2 weeks later, Matt Stafford called me, and he said, are you going to be at the banquet tomorrow? And I said, I hadn't planned on it. And there was quiet for a little while, and he said, well, why not? And I said, and Matt and I were in Impact Brass and Singers a long time ago. He said, Dave, I said, Matt, if you want me to come to your banquet, I'll be glad to come. He said, did anybody call you within the last 2-3 weeks? And I said, no, I don't think so. And he said, let me call you back. And about 5 minutes later, the phone rang. He said, well, this is really embarrassing. The night you interviewed, they decided to hire you, but I guess nobody told you, and we plan to introduce you tomorrow night. So that was my start, and so I thought I'm gonna try this for a year. I can figure out how to get back to Washington State, and I grew up out there. I'm still a hardcore Seahawks fan, and it's been rough historically over the years. But anyway, the Lord was really good, and my first year was a challenge. But after that, we had people like Lori. Wayne Bushnell was in that years, who's now the minister at Springfield, at a growing church. And time just went by, and great people like Lori graduate and move on and with their families and their churches and their careers. And you look up, and sometimes it's been 10 years. And so, but the Lord continues to bless us in so many ways. One of the things that, as we started, we were originally with College Heights, who birthed us. Koinonia started in 1967. The Four State Men had planted a church in Atlas, a small community kind of east of Joplin. And then in 1967, when Missouri Southern purchased the Mission Hills estate and opened, the Atlas Church dissolved and located to become what is now known as College Heights Christian Church, with the thought of ministering to Missouri Southern. B.A. Austin was the minister at the time, and so he planted the Koinonia Christian Campus Ministry. Ron Jones was the early campus minister. Rick Call, Willard Black actually was the first campus minister, and it was in those years that they had a contest to decide what to name it, and my understanding was the students, one submitted Koinonia, which is a Greek word for fellowship, won, and ever since then it's been that way. I just learned to spell that last week, so it's pretty good. Took me 35 years, but this year, on July 1, I started year 35, and it doesn't seem possible that much time. So I would have started about 2 years after Cliff started here. We were just reminiscing, and the Lord has blessed it so much. One of the things that I'll fast forward a little bit, we had always prayed about having student housing, and I purchased some houses on my own. I was a tent making ministry from very early. I had a photography business, Weaver Photography, and I kind of used that to meet high school students through senior pictures and proms. And so I'd get somebody come through senior pictures. They had some leadership. We'd talk about them and try to recruit them to Missouri Southern, and that was the way that we built a lot of our student leadership. But I had 3 houses that were my personal houses that we kind of took the place of. We didn't have the property, we didn't have the money for the ministry to buy homes. But probably around 2015 or so, one of our alumni was the minister at a small Baptist church called College View Baptist Church. They had 8 acres of property, and they were interested in selling half of it to raise money to replace the roof and some other things, and didn't see that they could ever need it. And so they sold it to us. I think we gave about $60,000 for it. And we were going to build a campus house until we realized that it was going to be way more than we could afford. The monthly payment would have been about $3,500. And so we scratched our heads, and I had some experience in a city administration at Duquesne for 17 years and knew a little bit about housing developments and all of that. And so we kind of changed path and said, let's build houses. Let's build revenue-producing houses. And then when those pay for themselves, we'll have enough money to pay for 1 staff member for 3 houses. And so we began to think, well, we need 2 staff people, so let's eventually get to 6 houses, then work on paying those off. And once those are paid for, it'll provide the money for 2 staff people at current entry-level jobs and leave about $1,000 to build a contingency fund for when the roof needs replaced and other things that inevitably need done on housing. So we built those first 2 houses and raced through. To long story short, we have 6 houses today, the very 6 that we felt like we needed. And so those houses will appraise. They're 1,850 square foot, 4-bedroom, 2-bath, 2-car attached garage. So if we can't rent to the students, if we don't have the number of students or the right type of students, we'll just put it on the open and rent to a family. So that was our backup plan. And you'll be surprised to know that our interest rate on those is 3.25%. So an extremely good rate, and the Lord really blessed us with that. So in those houses, we have Bible studies. I'd like to say they were all 6 filled with Christians and really active. We had a couple of years where we didn't. We did house the basketball team. We currently have 3 of our houses. With most of the Missouri Southern cross country team lives in our 3 of our 6 houses. And so that's a neat ministry. But in 2 of those houses, there are regular Bible studies going on. A couple of years ago, one of them was where the international students came and hung out. So they're always rotating. Each year has a season by house, by people that are in there. And it's a neat community. And I think you might have been out there, Rusty, to see some of them. Ethan lived there for a time. And it's neat to see that happening. So we knew that the church was struggling. They were down to about 11 members, and one of their leadership came and said, hey, I don't know how things are going to go, but you might be thinking about whether you might be interested in this building at some point. And we said, yeah, that would be of us, we had 4 acres. Acquiring that would have given us 8 acres, the houses and the building. And so not much came of that. Well, I received a phone call after church one day, and they said, can you get your board, we're having a board member to say whether or not you'd be interested in this church building. And I didn't know the details. I didn't know if they're going to sell it to us, what was going to happen. And so we had 2/3 of our board show up in a meeting and said, yes, very much, we'd be interested in this. Let us know what your thoughts are on it. Well, we didn't realize there was another group that was also interested in the church, and unknowingly found ourselves in a competition, so to speak. And I got a call from one of the leaders in the denomination that said, if you guys don't bow out, your name's going to be mud. And I said, we're not competing against anybody. We were asked a question, we answered it. We have no desire to downplay or degrade or anything. We just, if the Lord wants us to be in this building, it'll work out. Well, in January of, golly, it would have been right before the pandemic, would have been January 2020. I spoke to my board president. I said, look, if they offer us this building, we can't afford it. I said, we're barely making expenses now with salaries and activities. And, it would cost us probably around $1,500 a month for insurance and maintenance and utilities and all of those things. And we don't have it. I don't think we could raise it very quick. And if they offer it to us and we don't take it, we'll never get another shot at that property. So I said, it's a big problem. I don't know how we're going to figure it out. And we began to pray. Well, about that time, something happened. I'll get to that, but I want to go back. I graduated from Ozark Christian College. My wife and I both walked the stage at Ozark Christian and Missouri Southern on the same day. We were first across the stage at Ozark. We got our diplomas, got in the car, beeline with Southern. And so my degree is in Christian ministry and Christian education at Ozark, and then a Bachelor of Science in Business Administration Accounting at Missouri Southern. Later, I went on to get an MBA from Missouri State University in accounting, and my wife finished her master's in elementary ed at Missouri State, later in elementary education administration, and then I went on to get my master's in communication at Pittsburgh State University, and Laura went on to get her doctorate at St. Louis University, and she double-dogged there to get my doctorate, and I tapped out. I said, nope, not going to do that. I'm not that smart. But one of the interesting things is at that time, Missouri Southern and Pittsburgh State University both posted an accounting position. And so I asked my board president, should I apply for those? And he said, well, why would you do that? And I said, because if I get one of those, then I can cut my salary by 2/3 with Koinonia, and we can afford that building. I hire somebody from Ozark at an intern. And so we threw the fleece out there. Well, Missouri Southern said, we need you to have the PhD for ours for accreditation purposes. I said, okay. And so I interviewed at Pittsburgh State. I didn't hear anything for a month. And I was kind of bummed. I thought, we're going to miss this building. I don't know what's going to happen. Then I got a phone call from the dean at Pittsburgh State University, and they offered me the position full-time. So I called my board president and said, what do you want me to do with this? And he said, it's the wrong college. And I said, well, you tell God that. I'm not the one that arranged this. He said, well, okay, but you get back over here as soon as you can. And so in the fall of 2020, I began teaching 4 classes, 3 classes of managerial accounting and 1 in cost accounting. And then later I'm teaching the MBA course in financial strategy. And so it's been a busy semester. But that salary has allowed us to hire on full-time Adam Russell and his wife Viola part-time. Adam and Viola met on CIY. She's from Houston. And this is the first year he's been full-time and she's been part-time. And so my role has turned to be a little bit more of administrative, managing houses and buildings and grounds and paperwork. And they really manage the day-to-day, the Thursday night meetings and all of that. There's been good years as in ministry. You've got your good years and your hard times. Certainly coming through the pandemic challenged all of us. It's interesting at Pittsburgh State, I'm able to do ministry in a very different way. I meet with students quite a bit. None of them know me as a campus minister. A few of my students know that I teach accounting at Pitt State, and it annoys them greatly that I would be over there. But it's been a neat way to do ministry. But coming out of the pandemic, we began to grow. This year has been an amazing year. We are running about 95 on our Thursday nights. We've had 3 baptisms already this year. Our houses are full, every one of our houses. Most of them have all 4 of the students living in each house actively involved. A couple houses have 1 or 2 from the houses, but it's just been a big blessing with that. So on probably not long after Lori was there, we went into what we call small groups. And this came out of Tommy Tucker. Some of you know him from Tahlequah. I'd been there for many years. And, he talked about how at their ministry they use what they called core groups or small groups. And it took us 3 years to figure out how to do that. And so our thought was, we're going to do 20 minutes of worship, 20 minutes of teaching, and 20 minutes where they just break down to groups of 8 to 10 and talk about the lesson. And after 3 years, we got that to work. And I went to Tommy and I said, "You're a genius." I said, it took us 3 years to figure that out. And he asked me what we're doing. And he said, "Well, that's not what we do at all." And so a total misunderstanding, we put that together. And then he said, "Now, how did you do that again? We're interested in learning about that." But that one thing has defined us more so than any other thing, is the ability for students to talk about, and sometimes they don't. Sometimes somebody's hurt in the group and they pray for them. But that identity in those small groups following has been amazing. So one of the things that we did for a long time was we served meals on Thursday afternoons. And then Koinonia used to meet on Tuesday nights, and we found out that the number one party night on a university campus is Thursday night, which was strange. But the biggest party night, and we talked to students, say, "Oh yeah, that's, we go out partying starting around 8:30 or so, and we go to bed at 2, and we start to sober up." And I said, "Well, then let's move Koinonia on Thursday night, so it's right on top of party nights. We'll give them an alternative." And so we began to compete with that, and then they passed a new contract with the food service that the churches bring in meals and prepare them, and they said, "You can't bring in meals on campus unless you buy the food from us." And I said, "Well, how much is the food from you?" They said, "Oh, about $15 a meal." I said, "There's no way we can afford that." So we went for 2 years that our meal program was shut down. So after we built our first 2 or 3 houses, College View Baptist Church said, "Why don't you meet in our building?" We didn't own the building yet, but we began to use their building, and it allowed us to do the lunch again. One of the problems was when we were in the criminal justice building, Franklin Tech had a program in there, and we would have non-traditional adults that would come up about 100. The class would let out, and they'd wipe out all the food before most of our kids got there. And some of the churches preparing the food were upset. They said, "We're trying to feed 18-year-old students, not these 30-year-old adults." And it created some hardships with our meal program. But one of the things that happened was fewer and fewer churches were able to come in the middle of the afternoon because so many people worked to do the meal. So I said, "Why don't we put our meal on Thursday nights? And we don't need 2 hours to serve the meal. We can probably do it in a half hour. So if Koinonia starts at 7, let's serve our meal at 6:30. Then as the people come to serve the meal, they can see firsthand what's going on. And if somebody comes for the food, hopefully they'll stay for the program." Not all of them do. We might have 4 to 6 each week that come and eat and leave. And somebody said, "Well, are you mad at them?" I'm like, "No. If they want to come and eat our food and leave, that's fine with us. But I bet you we'll build a relationship if they come enough," and we do, and that happens. And so our band gets there to start rehearsing at about 4. The building opens about 3:30. The building will close about 10. They'll go out to Brahms, maybe play volleyball. Then they're back in one of the 6 houses. And so there are multiple entry points between 4 o'clock in the afternoon and 2 o'clock in the morning. I used to run with them till midnight or 1 in the morning. I can't do that anymore. I used to be 100 pounds lighter before I ate pizza at midnight with college students for 15 years. And that caught up with me. But anyway, it has been a blessing. I think one of the things, and in the videos, and maybe I can bring one of those up, the testimonies, or send one some, the testimonies of the 3 young men who were baptized this year, and just how the Lord has completely changed their lives. And it's neat to see our young men accepting the Lord and stepping up into leadership. This year, it seems like with our student leadership, I always struggle to have a balance of guys and girls and a balance by class. You don't want your whole leadership team graduating one year. So we won't allow people to be in leadership till they've been there for a year, but hopefully we've got a good mix of sophomores, juniors, and seniors. And we have that this year. We have a good mix of sophomores, juniors, seniors. We have a good balance of genders. One year, one of our other ministries, all their leadership was out of the music department. And the music department got at each other's throats somehow and had a big falling out, and his whole group quit. He went from 50 down to 3 students in 1 week throughout any fault of his own. So I learned, balance out your majors, so if they get at each other's throats, you haven't sunk the whole boat. But I feel like one of the things, we used to ask youth ministers to send us a list of all of your kids that are coming to Missouri Southern? Well, we found out a couple of things. Number one, youth ministers are on the go all summer long, and they're just coming off of church camps, and then boom, they're worried about getting their own. So we typically get that list in October, and I understand why, but October is a little bit late to meet people. And so I said, we don't really need that list. Let's put such a presence on campus that you can't walk on this campus and not know that we exist. It was early when Lori and Troy and Tron Peterson were there. We set up tables in every crossroads on that campus. And we said, we want everybody on campus to get 10 invites to our ministry. And we don't want it to be possible for you to be on the campus of Missouri Southern without knowing that we exist and you're invited. We accomplished that this fall. We had 4 tables set up from 10 o'clock to 2 o'clock every day, everywhere, all over campus for the first 3 weeks. And I think that made a big difference in the number of students that came. So is it a challenge in our universities? It is. In a generation that's dominated by this. When I teach accounting, I only have to bore them for about 2 minutes and the phones come out. That's the body language to tell me I'm losing them. And they don't even realize that by habit, we connect with the world through these things. Interesting enough, we had somebody from the Ozark Center speak at one of the Rotary clubs that I was in. And she said the number one age for depression and loneliness is 18 to 25-year-old males and females. I thought, how can that be? They're the most connected of anybody in the world. And she said, except they're not. And right then, that was a aha moment for me to realize what we do matters. And it's very, very important. What we do matters to the future of Milford Christian Church. Because your ministers and youth pastors are being trained at Ozark Christian College, but your elders and your deacons are being trained at Missouri Southern and Pittsburg State University. And so, very important. Somebody asked me, Weaver, what all are you involved in? We hear you do a lot of things. So let me tell you a little bit about myself, and then I will pass for questions. So in 2002, I was asked to be on the City Council of Duquesne, which borders Joplin. And so I served as a council member for several years till our family moved to Carthage for a few years. And then I became part-time city administrator. So I was a photographer, a part-time city administrator, and a campus minister. As digital came in, photography began to fade. My dad came to Joplin 2002 to be the minister at Park Plaza Christian Church. And so I left College Heights at the time to go to work with him, which I was very fortunate for 5 years to work alongside my dad. He passed away from cancer in 2007. And I made a phone call to a gentleman in Springfield, and I said, I need 2 things. I need you to speak at our banquet a year from now. But number 2, I need you to consider coming to Park Plaza Christian Church. And I was told by a lot of people, you're crazy. B.A. Austin would never come to Park Plaza Christian Church. And I said, well, the worst he could do is say no, and he might say yes. Long story short, he said yes, but only if you stay here as a part-time associate. I'm like, that's all I need is another job. So I said, okay. So we were finishing up a sewer project in Duquesne. On Friday, I sat in our mayor's office, and I said, I don't know what I'm going to do. There's nothing left in Duquesne to do, so I guess I'm wrapping up. He said, oh, David, surely something will come along, but we don't want you to leave. You just wait and see. Something will come up. That was Friday about 3 o'clock, and Sunday about 5 o'clock, our town got leveled by a tornado. And so I began to build relationships with the city of Joplin, with the government, state officials. I was kind of the lead for Duquesne and all that. Long story short, a lot of that led to several of the roles that I participate in now. I serve on the United Way Executive Board of Southeast Kansas, Southwest Missouri. I serve on the Habitat for Humanity Board on their Joplin Economic Housing Development. I'm the treasurer for that group. I serve on the Joplin School Board of Education. That's a very busy thing. I serve with the Joplin Area Chamber of Commerce on the MOCAN Area Partnership. I'm the treasurer for that. I'm on about 6 committees at Pittsburg State University on the faculty senate there. I was on the Diversity, Equity, Inclusion Committee for 2 years at Pittsburg State. I think it's important that we have Christians on those committees. And so I've been fortunate to serve on the executive committee with faculty senate. And so people are like, how can you work at Pitt State and Missouri Southern both? I said, well, it's hard. I have to put my Pitt State shirts and my Southern shirts in the opposite end of the closet because they get into it if they touch. But I will tell you that those 2, Missouri Southern and Pittsburg State, recruit students from all over the country and even all over the world and they bring them into our area, and some of them stay. In fact, a lot of them stay. And so on the athletic field, which Pitt State and Southern play in football this week, everybody asked me, who are you rooting for, Weaver? I said, I'm rooting for the kids, that they have a great game and no injuries. And so, and in more than just athletics, I'm rooting for the kids. Both in their professional life, that they find Christian husbands and wives, but also in their spiritual life, that they find Jesus. And we know that a young person that's active in campus ministry for 3 or 4 years of their college career, there's a 90% chance they'll stay active the rest of their life in churches. And I think Lori's a testament of that, and we've got leaders all over, and so very blessed with that. So a little bit about me. I'll shut off and ask any questions that you have.
What do you do in your spare time?
What do I do in my spare time? I got to sleep last week for an hour. It was awesome. We did get the church. Thank you for asking. In October of 2020, the COVID did the church in. And so they actually gave us the building along with about $13,000 in their savings account. So it was a huge blessing. Schuber Mitchell Homes helped us to replace all of the HVAC units in the building. There were 5. We still had carpet in that building from the 70s. We took out all the pews. We remodeled the auditorium. So we put about $60,000 in that building and still have a few projects. One of the things, too, I want to say, Milford has been an amazing blessing. The church prepares baskets for those students. They talk about that, like, why did they do this? Well, they want to show you the level. Why? And even non-Christian students, because not all the students in those houses are Christians or active in the church. The best meal of the fall is a chicken meal that Milford Christian Church brings in. And I know that's not cheap, but I will tell you that the students absolutely love that. In fact, they fight over the leftover chicken after you leave, just so you know. But yeah, we received that. So we now have 8 acres of land. We have the church building. We have 6 houses. We have the property to probably build another 10 houses. And it takes 3 hours to mow it all. And don't ask me how I know that. Yes.
I just wanted to say how glad I am that you guys are doing what you do there. I graduated from MSSU back in 2005, and they had your ministry there then, of course. And my last year, I was taking like 18 credit hours each semester, which is too much. And I went there, I ate there, I found hope there, I found people to prop me up, keep me from getting depressed, people to pray with me, and I had tried to start a Bible study in I forget if they called it the student union or the little coffee shop area, and they had asked me not to do that, said that they had too full a schedule, but it was all very differently directed things that they were going to be having the meetings over, not about God. You guys are important, and
Thank you.
It really helped me when I was there.
Thank you.
Thank you for being there.
Praise the Lord. Other questions? Yes.
For a while there, you all would do spring break trips, right?
Yeah. Yeah, in fact, one of our early spring break trips, we went down. Our first trip was to Saltillo, Mexico, which we did until 2008. Then the cartels kind of curtailed that. But we went to the church camp my wife grew up in Florida. We had Mexico cancel on us on about 3 weeks' notice, and so we called down to Florida. Lori was on that trip. She probably still has paint in her hair from that trip. One of the interesting things, and we just had this meeting, the 1 week trips aren't working for us. We had to cancel last year because and our student leadership this year said, we just don't want to be gone for a whole week. That's our only time we can see our families. And so that's a shift, and I don't know if it's good or bad. So we decided at our meeting last Tuesday not to do a week-long spring break trip, which is, in 35 years, we've canceled twice. So I don't know what that means. I know there's some shifts and changes coming. We didn't do the trip last year because we had to cancel, but then we grew 50% this year. And it used to be that our spring break trip really set up the fall leadership. So the fact that we didn't take one last year, I thought would have hurt us. So I don't know what this means. What I'm learning is in ministry, it's constantly changing. Good question. And at one time, I think we took 80 on that trip. And I'm hoping to grow it again someday, but we'll figure it out. Other questions? Okay, I've got 3 minutes to fill. You're going to get an accounting lecture if you don't come up with some questions.
Are you guys taking any summer mission trips?
So as far as summer mission trips go, what we do is we don't go to third world countries. One of the things that we're trying to do, and our students are taking, Missouri Southern has an international mission, so our students are traveling all over the world. I would say about a third of our students are actively traveling for credit in foreign countries and ministering on that trip. We try to partner our students up with organizations like Christ in Youth or others that are doing that, but at the time we didn't have the staffing to line that all up and to travel. Mexico used to be a great thing. To go down to Saltillo, it was a great way to introduce our people to a culture, you know, spending currency. They didn't look at ours, they couldn't read the billboards, they couldn't understand it. In 2008 was the last trip. We had hoped it'd get safer, but it hasn't. It's gotten worse. It's a good question. Any others?
How's your Bible studies organized or leadership organized? What you're going through the small group?
Yeah, so this semester we are working through the book of Romans, and that has been a great study. Our speakers, it seems like God prepared the way for that. We had Titus Neuenschwander speak last week, and his son Alex works for us. Alex was adopted when he was 4 years old, and he just told the whole story, and it was a rough story about how Alex came in their lives and what he'd been through. Alex had tears running down his face. He listened to his dad tell the story about him, but it was on that message about how Christ has adopted us. And it was just a neat approach, and he was uniquely qualified to give that. In fact, Alex met his wife in Quincy. They'll be married in December. So we'll start by feeding them. Then we'll start with the time of worship. We'll start with the teaching time. Then they go to the small groups. After the small groups, they'll go to Brahms or something of that nature. And then after that, they'll come back to the houses and do a number of different things. But the small groups are really geared to get questions, to get them to ask questions or dig into the text, give them ownership of that text and apply it. So we tell our leaders, don't reteach the lesson. You're a facilitator, not a teacher. And if you don't say a word for the whole time, you've been successful. So
How many of those do you have? How many small groups?
we have 6 small groups this year on Thursday nights, 3 girls groups, 3 guys, and we've got about 10 Bible studies meeting throughout the weeks. We got one guys group that's getting up at 6:30, which is amazing for college students. Coffee's a big thing. If any of you are in the 60s, you remember coffee shops, that's back. Just in a little bit different flavor, both literally and figuratively. So yeah, that's neat that those are going on. Yes?
Okay, so how do you train your leaders? Like, I know I was teamed up with another guy, so it's a guy-girl in the small groups that,
So our small groups right now are by gender. And every year we have to make that decision. Are we going to do them by gender or by mixed? And there's benefits, but what they've said is girls will open up more if the guys aren't in the room. And the guys. And so that has seemed to work well, but that's a choice they have to make in August about how we're going to do that. Right, for the last 4 or 5 years, we've been by group, but they've got Tuesday home group Bible, so all the others are by mixed gender. I should dig it up. There's still another one that meets for coffee that's just girls. The Wednesday coffee at downtown is just girls. So
do you do leaders retreating yet? Or like, some of those?
yeah, we do a lot of leaders trainings. They come in. It's a little bit different every year depending on what the need is. But typically we've got 2 leaders in each small group, and then we've got 2 below them that are kind of in training. So we'll put freshmen or people, and then if for some reason both our leaders can't be there, they're on deck. They're up and leading that. So it's kind of like a football. We're always trying to next man up philosophy, that when somebody graduates or transfers, we've got somebody to step in and take their place. Yes?
The houses, are they co-ed?
No. We have problems with some people thinking they are, and they get asked to leave pretty quick. We call that eviction, but yes.
Do you ever get the opportunity, you and your wife, to float around and sit in on a Bible study from time to time?
Sometimes, but if I do, I sit in the back because immediately they get intimidated, want me to lead it. But we do have feedback sessions and staff meetings. All of our staff are at one of those, and it's like, how is it going? What adjustments do we need to make? Our staff meetings, I wish would be lots of prayer in our time, but we also have a lot of logistics to cover. And it seems like in staff, sometimes you focus more on what's not working than what is working. But there is a good amount of prayer, and some of our leadership meetings are turning from organizational to more prayer time right now because of the years we're at what I call cruising altitude. So, thank you. Yes.
Do you guys ever get a chance to interact or try to aim some of the ministry at the professors there? Because I know that I tried, and my heart goes out to them. Some of them could really use a dose of Jesus.
So being a faculty member myself, that helps in a big way, both at Missouri Southern and Pittsburgh. So yes, but not in different ways. In different ways. So it's just being there and being a presence and sharing the gospel with them. And yes. My time is up, but I will be here in the morning service and in the lobby. And I don't have a table per se, but I'm wearing a bright green shirt for Southern, so look me up if you got any questions. And please don't tell anybody from Pittsburgh State I've got green on this morning. Thank you.